for those that were unable to attend. So the recording should be running now, and we should be sharing my screen. Please let me know if anyone has audio or visual connectivity issues. Just post in either the chat pane or preferably in the questions panel in GoToWebinar. I'll be monitoring that as I go through this presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen. Great. So we're going to go ahead and get started. This webinar will take maybe about 25-30 minutes with some room for questions. And it's an overview about being data-driven with your digital marketing and digital attribution. The webinar is designed for the Middle East, Northern Africa region, the MENA region here. My name is Amin Shaki. There's my email there on the screen if you have any additional questions or follow-ups after this webinar. I am the managing director of InfoTrust in Dubai, here in the United Arab Emirates. A little bit about InfoTrust before we dive into the webinar, just to give you a little bit of background about who we are. We're a US-based web analytics consulting and product development company, Inc. 5000 company in the United States. And we analyze and support thousands of sites annually on their web analytics strategy, implementation, reporting, and analysis. And we do training programs like this quite a lot during the year. We are wrapping up the year actually with this webinar since it's December and holidays are coming up, but very close partners with Google. We are Google Analytics certified partners as a company. Half the company or more are Google Analytics qualified individuals. We're also premium authorized resellers, Google Tag Manager specialists, and the list goes on there. So we definitely know what it takes when it comes to setting up a measurement strategy and implementation. So hopefully this webinar will be helpful for you to think about how to be more data-driven and thinking more about attribution, since that's been a buzzword throughout the year. How to actually tackle it going into 2016 is the goal with this particular webinar. So with that, we're going to dive right in and start to talk about how do we currently make marketing decisions, or how have we in the past, and what can we learn from that. So many organizations that we begin working with have a knack for setting up a lot of tracking or gathering a lot of data, but then ultimately just going on what they think is right, or listening to the hippo in the room. That's an Avnish Koshek acronym for the highest paid person's opinion. And just going with that for any marketing decisions. And that might not be, or as we know, and thankfully since you guys are joining this webinar, you agree, that's not the best tactic. But historically, gut instincts and historical habits have been what has driven us with marketing decisions. And this study here from Marketing Sherpa from a few years ago still highlights the challenges that we face when we're making marketing decisions, because all organizations want to move quickly, want to make sure they're ahead of competition and making the best decisions, but then don't really rely on data or how to leverage data to make those really informed decisions. And really, a few reasons why we're not data-driven with marketing. This screenshot here is from a Google presentation that they also took from Marketing Attribution Management Buyer's Guide. Really, the reason most marketers are not data-driven or do not use attribution modeling in their day-to-day analysis and when they're launching new campaigns are for these reasons here. They need more guidance and methodology. There's a lack of priority within marketing to really think about how the data can impact decisions, or how data should be reviewed on a regular basis so that the best marketing decisions can be made, or best investment decisions. But then also understanding the potential. You know, a lot of organizations that we begin working with have a lot of data collection. They want to keep tracking more and more, but really don't understand how to actually use that data or why it's valuable. So oftentimes we come in and try to figure out what are the business questions that, if answered, can make the company move faster or make smarter decisions, and just have data to show that. You don't need all the extra data that shows items that might not ever be relevant to any marketing decisions. But then lastly, marketers also are unsure how to choose a method or model when it comes to attribution modeling. By default, most analytics platforms and tools rely on or mainly display last click attribution. And we'll talk about a little bit what that means and the different other models. For this particular webinar, just because of our experience and because we're close partners with Google, we're going to be showing a lot of screenshots from Google Analytics, but hopefully the concepts can be applied to any other analytics platform should you be using any other tool in your organization. So in this particular webinar, I hope to tackle or show at least these last 2 points here, explaining some of the potential, having a lot of examples and case studies of what we've done in the past with some of our clients and organizations to really use the data and make some marketing decisions, but then also some overview on different attribution models and what you can be thinking of as you're building out campaigns for next year. So we're going to talk right into attribution and data-driven marketing and some best practices here. So first, let's start with the definition of attribution, since it's constantly changing. One definition that we like, also given to us by Google, or the way they describe it, is conversion attribution is the practice advertisers use to give appropriate credit to every impression, interaction, or click that help drive a conversion in a campaign. The way we look at attribution modeling is how you properly assign credit or give campaigns what they deserve as far as did they impact an ultimate conversion, a purchase, or a completed goal of some kind. So there's a lot of interactions that users take, engaging with your brands or your organization before they commit to giving you their information or making a purchase or diving in. All of those interactions along the way are impacting the ultimate conversion. And attribution is a way to just identify which interactions deserve the most credit or are most important and should be thought of when you're planning out future campaigns. So we like to look at attribution as just a better way to analyze top performing campaigns instead of the ones that just drive the ultimate action. And to visualize, I guess, the way individuals interact with different brands, it's in multiple stages. There's different consideration stages, if you will. There's an awareness stage, and this is more where consumers are just becoming aware of your brand or your product or your organization, and they're just exploring. So really the C section here. But then there's also the think, where they know about your brand, they're aware, and they're actually actively contemplating engaging further or making an ultimate purchase. And the example here, men who wear shoes versus who are actually thinking they might need the shoes. So they're actively contemplating what they need. And that translates into ultimately making the decision, which is actually looking to purchase or perform some kind of action. With most analytics tools today and most organizations that we work with initially, they're very focused on what is driving this action here, which is valid because that is very important. What are the specific campaigns or engagement points or consumer actions that lead up to that particular purchase or conversion? But it's really important to think, as an individual yourself, you engage with a brand multiple times before potentially buying. It's very rare that someone would immediately commit to buying a product the first time they see it ever. There's some products that are designed that way, but most require some coaxing or convincing and research, especially with the digitally in touch consumer today. So attribution, and what we're going to be talking the majority of this webinar, is considering how to analyze and set up campaigns or think about your data so that you incorporate these two stages, these other consideration stages, as part of your marketing mix. So an example from this particular region that we always like to bring up is Emirates Airlines, because you'll see them everywhere. They're on TV, they're on radio, they're all over the internet. They're even out and about on billboards or in various other places. You see their marketing, you see their brand constantly being exposed to you and to all the people in this region and across the world. So the question is, when someone decides to actually make a purchase or book an airline ticket with Emirates, what channel, what advertising method actually gets the credit? And that's what attribution modeling is designed to try and answer, is what interactions deserve the most credit, attention, and investment in the future, because they're ultimately the ones that are driving that ultimate purchase or engagement. So to talk about how we can set up attribution modeling or be more data-driven with campaign setup, we need to talk about how attribution is actually defined and how it's actually set up. So in any analytics platform, you will have some acquisitional metrics or your channels or your sources where you're investing your marketing spend to bring users to your website or to expose them to your brand. But then ultimately, you also need what you're trying to do or have your consumers do, whether that's just learn more and understand your brand very well, or actually complete a purchase or sign up for more information in an account or what have you. Because the way, as far as in Google Analytics terms, since I'll be showing examples from that, both the acquisitional tracking, seeing where people are coming from, and the conversion metrics or the conversion data that you need, both of those ingredients are added together for the attribution. That's the basic formula. You need to know what is working to get people aware of your brand and on your site, and how are they converting or how often are they converting. These two together will unlock almost all the reports in Google Analytics, particularly the attribution, multi-channel funnel, and those types of reports. So with data-driven marketing, there's a couple steps to follow that we're going to actually walk through here. Gathering all of your channel data, or all your campaigns. So with attribution, especially in 2016, in this region, there's a lot of activity on various different channels, but really getting clear visibility into which ones are actually bringing users or exposing users to your brand, that's the first step. Now, what we like to do as a second step is immediately bringing in the spend data, or how much you're investing in those different channels, and really painting the picture for what your cost of acquisitions are. There's some key metrics that really define whether a channel is performing or not, and how you can be data driven. And it's simply volume of sessions and revenue and completion or conversions, but also at what spend, at what cost will it take to actually get a channel to start performing. But then layered on beyond that, thinking more long-term and attribution mindset, is adding in additional data like lifetime value or offline conversions, offline interactions that might have been impacted from online activity that you're doing or online spend, and then beginning the analysis from there. So I'm going to walk through the steps here of how that can be set up specifically with Google Analytics. So first we want to talk about just acquisition channels. This is a little bit basic, but oftentimes when we begin relationships with different consumers or different customers, we don't see this even in place. And when we talk about acquisition channels with Google Analytics as an example, once you have that tracking code on your site, a lot of things are automatically tracked. But there's some configurations that you need to add in. Specifically, when we're talking about channels, there's a configuration called channel grouping, and that's really how you want your data to identify where users are coming from. Oftentimes when we begin a relationship with an organization, we see the default channel groupings that Google automatically provides as the only setup. One easy thing, and as a takeaway potentially for your organization, is splitting paid search. If you're running advertising on different paid search channels, you might, or what we would recommend, is understanding what is the impact of paid branded search versus unbranded. And what that means for branded paid search, that's your company's brand terms. So the name of your company or variations of how people could search for your company. A lot of organizations we work with would argue that branded paid search or branded organic search, people that are going to a search engine but searching for your company as their term, they should be categorized as just direct traffic. They basically just typed in the URL of your website and got directly to your site. That's what they were looking for. So really there should not be, a lot of organizations we talk to say they don't want to give any credit to that because something else before that is what really got them interested and really sold them, some other channel, some other aspect. So really thinking through your channel groupings and how you want to identify where users are coming from is quite important. If you just have paid search, at that level, it doesn't really give you clarity if it was a keyword about your company or if it's something about your services or your offering, and that could impact how you run marketing in the future and different advertising campaigns that you might expose. Another thing that I want to talk about for this particular slide, again, it's a basic slide from Google Analytics, but a common challenge, or I'm not sure if it's a challenge, but opportunity that we see with organizations is when you look at data, instead of just looking at the pre-built reports and trying to come up with analysis there, there's all sorts of baked in sorting and filtering capabilities within your analytics platform. With Google Analytics, in this particular screenshot, you'll see that we're actually sorting this report by revenue, this metric here on the far right. By simply changing how we're sorting this data, we can see that various channels are actually reordered now, where by default they would be ordered by sessions, purely on the volume that they're bringing to your website, the acquisition metric. So by simply modifying how you're sorting your different channels or different dimensions, whatever you're looking at, you can begin to, again, be more data driven instead of purely looking at one metric and how to improve that one metric, because then you're very siloed and you're not very data driven. By looking at these different metrics and sorting and filtering against them, you'll may be able to come up with new insights about what is really working and what needs improvement with your marketing. So that's how we would define being data driven with your marketing, is not just taking the data as is, but trying to dive a little deeper, segment, split up the data, and see new insights or see the data in a different way and on a regular basis. So step 2 that we discussed, or that I mentioned a little bit earlier, was importing spend or cost data. This is really valuable when you're trying to understand your cost of acquisition or what it takes to actually bring users to your site and ultimately convert. So with Google Analytics, there's capability specifically to bring in that cost data from your different channels and marketing spend. So beyond just Google-owned products and services like AdWords or DoubleClick or YouTube, you can bring in the spend data from your other channels and begin to paint a clearer picture about how much you're spending versus the effectiveness of different channels. And again, thinking more not just on pure volume, because anybody can spend millions of dollars with any channel and they'll get the volume, but really, are they getting the volume for the spend that makes sense for your business? Then you can ultimately tie your conversions or e-commerce back to your advertising channel and begin to see different data and different insights. Such as shown in this slide here, once you bring in that pre-session data, in this example we're talking about cost or spend, if you overlay that with revenue, say you're an e-commerce shop, then you begin to see new metrics unlocked. And this is, again, specifically with Google Analytics we're talking here, but you can begin to see things like return per click or return on advertising spend. And that return metric is, again, a different way to look at what channels or what different activities are more important for your business or working better. So in this particular example, it's interesting. I always like to point out that Google CPC and Bing may be bringing in more sessions. Again, we're sorting by the standard automatic report here, which is just sessions. And the spend is higher, so it makes sense that they're bringing in more sessions. But if you look, you can see that Facebook Social, though the amount of sessions is not extremely high, the cost is very, very low, and the return on advertising spend is actually higher than any other channel shown here or any other source medium. Potentially, what this could mean is that Facebook has more users that are ready to do that purchase or that last step, or they're more lower in the funnel. So if you invest more in this particular channel but keep the return on advertising spend high, you earn more margin. So it's a way to look at the data differently. Again, instead of just saying, oh, Google CPC, that's our top channel, let's keep pumping more investment there. This is an opportunity here to provide a new look or a new angle, and maybe some testing to see how you can drive your bottom line. What we're going to talk about a little bit later today is how to take this even one step further and, again, look at that attribution or multi-channel interaction, because it could be that Facebook is really good for closing or that last channel because users already know your brand, they're already considering they're ready to purchase. So the messaging and advertising that you do on Facebook should be tailored to actually driving that last conversion, where other channels such as search, which would make sense, is a little bit more upper funnel potentially, or display might be included within this Google CPC volume here, hence why impressions are so incredibly high in this example. But it's really good to get people aware of your brand so that later they can maybe convert with a different channel. So using attribution modeling, multi-channel funnels, but then also keeping in mind the cost and spend of your different channels is important when you're trying to be more data-driven. Okay. taking this even one step further, we like to think what other bits of information would make sense to integrate with your analytics platform so you can get even more insights on what's working, what's not. We had a really good webinar a few weeks back on integrating marketing systems together with Google Analytics and what insights can come out of that. In the chat pane, we actually have a link to those slides in that webinar recording, so I encourage everyone to check that out. But one example of adding additional data and the insights that can come out of that is adding lifetime value or any data from your CRM system. So again, thinking how your consumers interact with your brand or organization, it goes beyond digital potentially. It goes into interactions with your sales force or in person with your brick and mortar stores. There's a lot of different ways consumers can engage with your particular company and brand that deserve credit as well. Where web analytics platforms previously were very focused on just digital efforts and focusing on what's happening online. With analytics platforms today, particularly with Google Analytics and the new universal analytics capabilities, you can actually bring in that offline interaction and offline touch points that consumers might be having with your brand or company and see how that affects your marketing performance or anything that you're doing online, your digital campaigns. In this particular screenshot, we're showing how by tracking user ID for users that are authenticated on your website or somehow identified themselves, as any interaction that happens offline, as long as that user is known, we can bring that back into GA and see the impact there. So you can begin to see how mailers sent or sales calls might impact online conversion and revenue, or offline sales. Where did these offline sales originate from online, or was there any content consumed online that impacted an offline sale potentially? And then of course, if you're tracking things like customer lifetime value in your CRM platform because you're engaging with customers on a regular basis, you can bring that in as well and see how your marketing activity online is affecting or growing your customer lifetime value as well. So shameless plug here. I'm going to throw a quick promotion about one of our products here, because one challenge that we see organizations face is they have all these different data systems and they want to integrate and unlock these new insights, but they're not sure how. And when there is a way to do it, it's very time intensive, requires technical development and integrations. Well, we actually built a product that tries to streamline the integration process with Google Analytics specifically, called Analyzely here. So again, with Google Analytics and Universal Analytics specifically as an upgraded platform, you can begin to bring in data from external sources such as cost, product data from your product database, refund campaign, user data, or really any other data from other systems into Google Analytics, as long as you can link it up to something that's already tracked online, such as a user ID, transaction ID, product ID, etc. Again, went into this a lot more in depth and actually gave a demo in our last webinar, so highly recommend checking out that recording. But long story short with Analyzely is that it's a tool that can automate this process. So when you're thinking, how can I be more data-driven or unlock new capabilities with my analysis, just know that there are tools that can help you streamline the process to actually get the data available so that you can focus on analysis. Speaking of analysis, some tools and technologies that are available, again, within Google Analytics includes the attribution reports and the multi-channel funnel reports. So with Google Analytics, automatically, you can see how users are coming to your site over time from different sources, and if they ultimately convert, how those different sources played into that entire consumer journey. So I'm going to show some examples of how we look at attribution models side by side to try and unlock some insights. But you can see here in the top section here from Google Analytics, you can see what channels are labeled as assisted conversions, meaning they had a part in the ultimate consumer journey that converted, but they might not have been the last one that drove that ultimate conversion. Or if they were last click, if they were that ultimate last source that drove that consumer to do that purchase or that conversion, you can sort it by this way as well. And if you're tracking revenue, if you're an e-commerce shop as well, you'll be able to see how automatically different channels can have conversion value applied to them based on what model you're looking at. So if you give all of the credit to the channels that first brought someone into your consumer journey, aka first interaction, all of the revenue that's tracked will go to that first channel that brought users in, and zero conversion or zero revenue will be attributed to that last click, because that's not what you're interested in. You're interested in just getting people into your funnel. Furthermore, Google can actually show you the path itself that consumers might take between different channels in the multi-channel funnel report, which I show a little bit further in a couple slides. One thing that Google Analytics has with their premium enterprise product is data-driven attribution modeling. The data-driven attribution tool is essentially an algorithm or is powered by a Google algorithm that takes all of the data in your Google Analytics platform, including imported spend data, imported cost data, and tries to assign credit based off of the data for different channels. So instead of you manually assigning all credit to last click, the last thing that ultimately someone did before converting, or first click, the first thing that got them into the consumer journey, Google tries to calculate the credit that should be assigned for you. The power behind this is actually when you compare the data-driven attribution to your other attribution models as well. So if most of your analysis is still on last click, which the majority of organizations are, by applying a comparison against data-driven attribution, you can maybe see where you should be giving more credit to different channels because they might not be the last converter, but again, somewhere before that with a different model, they might be. And data-driven is kind of a combination of different models since it takes all your data in to assign the credit for you. So this is automatically available with Google Analytics Premium, the enterprise product that Google provides. So I want to take it a step further. I know I talked a little bit about integration with CRM and bringing that offline data, but I want to show actually a use case of something that we've done in the past that's very possible for other organizations to take as well, and that's connecting the multi-channel or omni-channel consumer and their engagements together back in GA. So the process that we would do this, and the process that's available in GA right now, there does need to be some sort of CRM or user database somewhere that's capturing that offline interaction. So if users are going to your brick and mortar store and actually completing a purchase, they would need to be providing their email or phone number or something and track that. Your organization would need to track that somewhere so that we can access that interactions offline to bring it back online. But essentially the process would work something like this, and this is a prototype that we've actually rolled out that I have a slide or two about. As a consumer would actually come to your website, complete a purchase or fill out a form, they'd somehow authenticate, basically provide you some information. And in Google Analytics, we would track that user, that conversion, even if it's a micro conversion like just filling out a form or making a phone call, we would know in Google Analytics that that particular user came and performed that action. In your CRM system, that's where you would track your customer data, transaction history, or things of that nature. Once you have that data tracked in your CRM, we can then link the data that we tracked from your users going to your websites or online activity back to their CRM offline activity through the data import process, maybe using Analyzely. But then even take it a step further, again, to be more data-driven, actually power marketing systems with this now linked CRM and analytics data together. So it's actually a way to automatically be data-driven instead of having to analyze and taking the data and coming up with insights and making change there. By creating things like remarketing lists to power your programmatic buying on DoubleClick or just your AdWords remarketing display campaigns, you can actually use your CRM data about your users, how they're engaging with your brand, and who they are or deeper characteristics about them as part of your advertising campaigns as well. So I want to show an example of actually how this looks when implemented. So with an organization that we were working with, they had most of their conversions happen offline. They had a website that you could purchase directly online. It was an e-commerce site, but they also had a phone number that someone could directly call to work with a salesperson to complete that purchase because they were higher ticket items. Or they could fill out a lead generation form and have a salesperson call them to close the sale later on as well. So there's a lot of activity happening offline, though they were spending a great deal on online advertising and online marketing. So what we did, we used Google Analytics to track their online activity, where they're coming from, how they're getting to the site, their attribution there digitally. But then as soon as they made a phone call or completed a lead generation form, we would capture information about that session or that user in those different platforms. So later on, when the salesperson or whoever's closing them was working with them and actually completed the sale, they would track that in their separate CRM system. In this case, it was Salesforce. And we automatically integrated Salesforce to push that data back into GA so that you could tie the digital campaigns that might have led to an offline transaction, offline sale. And you can see that here that we can basically look at the transactions that occurred, what source medium brought that transaction, and then if the actual final closed deal happened offline, such as this here, the affiliate equals offline, we're able to bridge that gap together through CRM integration. And through this work, our client, Pelican Waters, was able to see 15% offline conversions now tracked in Google Analytics that came from PPC, where before that was not there. There was no visibility. There was a lot of investment going into PPC or Google advertising, brought a lot of users to the site, but ultimately not sure if they converted or not. So there's a lot more clarity into the value of advertising that might be running online as it pertains to offline. So again, data-driven there because the data lives in two places. Just bring it together and you'll unlock this different insight. So want to talk again about specifically in GA using the attribution report. So to review, the basic formula that unlocks a lot of the attribution modeling reports is tracking your channels and how users are getting to the site, as well as the conversions, what you want people to actually do, whether it's a purchase or completed form or some kind of user interaction that you're tracking as a goal. So goals are user interactions that you're wanting your consumers to do on your website, such as watching a video, which might be considered a micro conversion, or completing a form, or registering, signing up for a newsletter. Any action that you want your users to complete can be considered a goal. E-commerce is also important. It can also be considered a conversion, but that's a little bit self-explanatory as what that is. If you're selling products online, it's actually tracking the closed sales or the closed deals as a conversion there. It's really important to make sure the first part of your attribution formula is in place, which is acquisition tracking. So this is more, I'm not going to spend too much time, but it's really important to make sure that your channels are tracked, your advertising has visibility in GA. We have had other webinars and other sessions all about UTM tracking or campaign tracking, so I'm going to skip that here, but I just wanted to make sure it's noted that for attribution modeling to work, you do need that visibility into what is bringing users to your site and what's causing them to engage with your brand. So we have a question come in. I'm going to check it out real quick. Which CRM software can be used to import data into GA? That's an excellent question. To answer that, really any CRM system can be used to import data into GA. It's just a matter of how. So with Google Analytics, the key prerequisite, if you will, for any kind of importing from any system is there needs to be at least one data attribute tracked in GA that you can link to other systems as a connecting key. So what we've done in the past, we've integrated Salesforce, we've integrated Marketo, Pardot, HubSpot. These are marketing automation tools, even custom user databases and custom product databases, because there was a way to export data from that CRM system, whether it's via an API automatically or just export as CSV flat file of data. As long as one column or one attribute within that data export can match another attribute in Google Analytics, you can process that import and bring in that data together. Now, there are some caveats or things to watch out for, such as if you're uploading custom dimensions or custom attributes, you would need to make sure you create those first in GA, or custom metrics. Without getting into the nitty-gritty about that, we can definitely take that offline if you have further questions. But to answer your question, any CRM software potentially could be imported into GA. It's just a matter of how. We built a tool, Analyzely, to connect automatically to different sources, so we can certainly talk more about a specific use case. So hopefully that answers your question there, and feel free to ping me directly if you have further questions on that one. So back to the presentation here as far as showing some capabilities within Google Analytics for attribution or understanding different channels and different campaigns. One report that we like to use is the multi-channel funnel reports to see how users are engaging with different channels and what does the consumer path actually look like. The interesting thing here, the commonly not used feature with this report is you can create conversion segments. Basically, this is logic similar to an advanced segment in Google Analytics to either isolate particular channels or see channels, how they interact in a specific location, or anything around the channels and campaigns that are coming to your site. Or bringing users to your site. In this particular screenshot, we're showing any interaction that contains paid search. So we want to see the full effectiveness of paid search, even if it's not getting the last click attribution, as most of the reports would show. And you can see by isolating just paid search, all the different paths and ways that consumers are looking at paid or coming to the site via paid search link. You can see it's very involved, even if it doesn't get the credit all the time, such as organic search sometimes being the last thing to convert that user, or email. But oftentimes it is the first thing that is introducing people to this particular organization's brand or website. So the messaging or the type of advertising that you might want to perform on paid search should be matching kind of how your consumers are consuming that content. Meaning, since it's mainly the first point of interaction, a lot of the times this probably means that users are just searching for something not related to your brand, but something related to your services or products. So that advertising should be related to that type of content to get those users that are just looking to solve a problem that your organization can provide. Taking that one step further, with Google Analytics, you can actually integrate now with YouTube. It's actually been available for a little while, but a hidden capability, so that you can see if you're running any YouTube advertising like videos, you can actually see how impressions of those videos or impressions on your display ads impact ultimate conversion, even if users don't click on that particular display ad or YouTube video to get back to your website. So anytime you see this icon here, which is rich media icon, or an eyeball, you can see that's impressions that impact ultimate conversions in your multi-channel funnel reports. Also, with Google Analytics Premium, you can integrate your DoubleClick if you're using DoubleClick Campaign Manager, Bid Manager, or DoubleClick Search as well, and also see the effectiveness of impressions as they have on conversions. So within DoubleClick, you can see the view through or click through and bring that data automatically into GA so that you can link it with site engagement, such as if it's view through, what else did they do after that view through that they might not have clicked on the ad, but they're definitely looking for something on your site or ultimately converting on your site as well. One thing that's available to all Google Analytics accounts is attribution modeling. In this particular screenshot, data-driven attribution is included, which is just premium. But what we often do for our organizations that we're running analysis or providing recommendations is using these reports to compare different models and try and uncover where credit can and should be assigned. So in this particular example, we're looking at last interaction, which is how most of the reports in Google Analytics are constructed, compared to first interaction. So if you were to give credit for the conversion completely to the first channel that brought users in within a 30-day window, that would be the first interaction, versus the automatically calculated data-driven attribution model that Google provides to show the effectiveness of different campaigns. And what's interesting here is if you look at the last column, you can actually see Google will calculate the percentage difference in conversions or conversion value between different models. So for this, we see that Criteo, in this example, is a retargeting platform. Well, in general, Criteo is a retargeting platform. So by definition, it shouldn't have very much first interaction conversions or visits because it's a retargeting platform. In this particular look-back window, it might. If you extend the look-back window further, it might not have as many. But you can see most of the conversions that are attributed to Criteo are last interaction or data-driven, meaning Criteo might not always be the last interaction before someone converts, but it definitely has a play as being part of the consumer journey a lot more. And that's where data-driven attribution comes into play here, because it's giving more credit to Criteo based off of all the data that you have in GA. And in that case, if you're thinking, okay, Criteo is not driving as many conversions as our email or Google organic, so we should reduce investment. If you actually look at the percentage difference with data-driven, you can see that it is actually, it deserves a lot more credit than it's given when you're comparing these two models. But this is how we look at attribution modeling. If you're wanting to get started and unsure how to use these tools or which model your organization should have, hop down to the model comparison tool and just apply different models together and see what kind of insights you can have. Which channels have more first interaction versus last interaction, or I think I have another example here. Compare it also to linear attribution, meaning equal credit is given to every single touch point a consumer has before converting. So it's a little bit more evenly spread as far as the conversion value or conversion credit across every single channel that a consumer might engage with. What we're doing here in this example, this is actually from a real customer. We were trying to identify paid search and how their investment should go into different channels potentially or different sources. So we're trying to be data driven as far as spend data for search specifically. So you can see that Google CPC is getting a higher investment, is driving a lot more conversion value, a lot more conversions in general. So by default, most reports would show Google CPC as much more effective than Bing, which in that regard, it is. What we wanted to do is just look at the data a little bit differently by bringing in cost data, the spend data, as well as looking at return on advertising spend. We actually see that though spend is significantly less for Bing, the amount of revenue in comparison is actually higher percentage-wise, and thus the return on advertising spend is nearly double that of Google. So potentially by investing more or putting more spend into the Google CPC campaigns, which you can drill down to all the way to the keyword level and look at attribution modeling, maybe we can keep the high return on advertising spend, but just drive up the conversion value. Instead of purely looking at what's giving us the most value last click, or not even last click, but across different models without cost or spend included, let's add that in and actually see the return and base analysis off of that as well. The screenshot here at the bottom is just simply showing another way to compare Bing and Google side by side. And you can see by looking at beyond just sessions, again, purely volume or purely revenue amounts or transactions, looking at other metrics might give you different insights as well, such as if your organization is more about getting new consumers, more reach, and a bigger user base, perhaps the channels that are converting the most, if it's an e-commerce site, for example, is not as big of a focus as those that are bringing in new sessions or new users and getting more branding or more awareness out. So in this case, we see that Bing CPC is actually getting a lot more new sessions and percentage-wise new users compared to returning users than Google CPC or other paid search channels. So it could be potentially more effective for widening the amount of users, where Google CPC is more about converting the users once they've already been aware of your brand. So the next section is to quickly go over some just other ways to be more data-driven. And actually, we have about 10 more minutes before the end of this webinar. So let me quickly go through some other ways to be data-driven based off our experience with other organizations. There's tools like intelligence events within Google Analytics, which again is automatically calculated changes or alerts that are created to identify potentially marketing campaigns that are more effective or less effective, or any change that might be happening worth noting and worth reviewing. So the reason I included this as a data-driven best practice is because it's already automatically created for you. So referencing these or having them alert you so that you can make decisions quicker instead of spending once a week or once a month reviewing what happened, actually being more immediately reactive to the data that's being fed to you. That's what we define as being data-driven, is actually listening to your data on an ongoing basis and making decisions off of that. So intelligence reports is a good place to start to see, okay, this campaign we just launched is really doing well, or for whatever reason we had a significant drop or change in this metric. Let's dig into that. And actually with Google Analytics, when you click details or set up a custom alert, it actually gives you analysis for you. So again, to accelerate how you're analyzing different data, In Google Analytics, you can see major contributors to a particular alert. So if it was a spike or a drop in certain traffic or certain metrics, Google tries to identify what those key characteristics are. And for you as a marketer, you can look at this and understand, okay, so this is the key reason that we had a spike or a drop in this particular campaign or activity that we're doing. So here's how we can modify that or change it. Instead of spending hours and hours building reports and trying to dig into the data, have Google do the work for you with custom alerts and intelligence events. One other example that I wanted to show of a customer that we've worked with, actually there's a Google case study about it, is with out-of-stock products. So if you're an e-commerce shop and you have inventory on your site, but sometimes products run out of stock and users might see a page where a product is not available at the time, you can actually track that in Google Analytics. And what we've done for organizations is process that data on a day-over-day basis and send daily emails to the inventory team directly when a new product or a product runs out of stock or runs out of inventory day over day, so that they can immediately either restock that or add messaging to the site when it will be restocked, or to sign up for alerts so that they can get on back order, or even modify your advertising campaigns so that you're not directing people to a page where a product is out of stock or something ran out. So by doing this day-over-day automatic reporting, automatic data feed into those different marketing teams, those teams were able to be more data-driven instead of understanding after the fact that there's been a page or a product that's been out of stock for a week or two, and you've lost a lot of consumers because of that. Last example that I have here is just when thinking about, again, cross-channel or omni-channel usage. If you're an organization that runs a lot of media spend on TV or radio, connecting that to the digital platforms can be challenging. What we've done in the past, and this is more of just an example to keep in mind, is overlaying the spend or airing times with online volume of sessions from direct and organic search or paid search. By looking at the volume of traffic throughout time and overlaying the volume of your media, such as on TV or radio, you might be able to build some correlations there that can aid in determining, okay, which media channel or media investment is actually more valuable. In this example here, we see that direct visits proportionally increase when there's more spend happening offline, such as on TV commercials in this particular example. So as airings would go and spend would increase per day, you would see a spike in direct visits as well. So there was a correlation there that allowed us to understand the effectiveness of those offline channels. So to wrap up the webinar, since we're nearly out of time here, is just getting started. And a lot of our getting started slides are very similar because it's all about planning. So basic principles is have a plan, build a wish list. What are the business questions, business goals, and things that you can make decisions on based off of the data, or you need data to make quicker decisions on. Map that out, build your requirements, because that'll be almost your guiding light to how you should set up tracking, how you should set up your reporting, and what you can do to automate the process of getting insights. Tactically, definitely create goals, set up conversions within Google Analytics if you're using that, and really get visibility into your channel tracking. But above all is set up a rollout schedule and milestones for each implementation, and then test away. And for testing, we actually have a validation testing tool. Again, another shameless plug here for our tool, taginspector.com. It can audit your website completely to see how you're deploying different analytics platforms or technologies so that you can get that visibility and ensure that at least the quality of data that you're receiving is top notch, because not having quality data equals having no data or not having or making not data-driven marketing decisions for sure. To summarize, I guess the best way to get buy-in or to change the organizational culture within your company is to be able to tell a story with the data. So think about the different teams that you might want to present data to, how frequently you want data to be given to them, what's going to actually make sense to them, and then paint the picture for that particular audience. So I mentioned what we did for out-of-stock products and the automation of reporting to see day-over-day changes in inventory. We packaged that report for the inventory team to show specific SKUs and how much they're out of stock in specific times that they run out. Whereas the marketing team just needed to know the brand and the category so they can modify the content on the site or the advertising that they're doing against those products at the brand or category level. So same data, but just packaged differently to tell the story for those different teams. And the way we would recommend painting the picture or telling the story is to have having your project split up into goals, what approach you want to take, and then having results ready. In this particular example, kind of tying this all together between offline, online, integrations, attribution modeling, our goal with one of our clients, Cowan's Auctions, was just to determine which campaigns were driving the highest bids. They're an auction house. And what that return on ad spend was for various channels so that they can be smarter with where they're investing. And the approach was simply integrating their bidding platform, because that's where ultimately the completed successful bids occurred, with their Google Analytics platform, because that's where they were seeing what channels were driving users, what channels were driving bids, but not the winning bids. By combining the winning bids with the online behavioral data that Google Analytics can provide of their users, we were able to identify the channels that drove the highest value for completed winning bids and just the most winning bids. And by showing them these are the channels that are driving the most value and most winning bids versus these are not, they were able to modify their advertising spend and marketing mix. And the results here is 42% increase in online bidding, because they were only advertising on the channels that were working for that particular goal, as well as conversions and bid value went through the roof because they were really focusing and being data-driven with where they were investing their marketing spend. So with that kind of wraps up today's webinar. I don't see any questions coming through, but I'll hang around for a few extra minutes in case anyone has any additional questions. But I encourage everyone to check out our upcoming events here on our website, infochestllc.com/all-events. This webinar will be recorded and the slides will be provided to you later on, probably early next week, the second week of December in 2015. But feel free to ping me directly if you have any additional questions. But with that, thank you so much for joining. I'll hang around for a few minutes on mute in case any questions come up, and then close the webinar in about 5 minutes. Thank you so much, everybody.